And we are live. Hey guys. So today on Blue Collar Tradesman, as you can see, I have redone my office. It looks a little bit better. We have some stuff on the walls now. We have a bookcase back there, and don't mind the elliptical over here. But today I got a product review for you guys. Today we're going to be looking at the Fluke 117 and 323 multimeter pack. It comes in a padded case, and Fluke typically makes some really good products. I really enjoy their products. They last a long time, and they typically cover a whole lot of different things whenever you need it. They do make some product specific or measurement specific products as well. But in my trade doing HVAC, I typically find these meters to be some of the more superior ones. I do use field piece as well when it comes to just a variation of multimeter whenever I need to double check a measurement, or I'm just not confident in what my measurement is. So in this pack we have all this shit. Now this is your they say it's safety information, so how to use it, I would say, it's probably kind of like the instruction manual. You have their basic usage card and how to kind of get the readings that you're looking for with it, and just basic use of this is for the 117. And then we have just some instructions on the magnet here that comes with it. And then another instruction card for the 323 amp clamp meter. Okay, and then obviously the safety instructions to go along with that. Now, when we open this up, we had the instructions and we had a strap. Okay, this will go for the case. There's some D-rings here. I don't know how well we can pick those up. But basically, you have one of these on either side. You put your strap on, and you can throw it over your shoulder and carry it. All right, now let's take a look at the 323. So here's the Fluke 323. Now I already have this set that I use in my main pack, and when I do a breakdown on my main pack, you'll see it in there. I carry the same combo kit, just without the case. I put it in the individual pockets. But this is the amp clamp, okay? Now, when I use this product, typically this is more or less my dedicated amp clamp. And the reason why I do that is primarily because this is pretty limited function. It has resistance checking, DC voltage, AC voltage, and then AC amps. Okay, so as far as functionality, this is pretty basic. I don't really get a ton of use out of it for anything other than checking amperage on motors, compressors, things like that. Something I can put my wire around, or put my clamp around the wire and check its amperage in comparison to the data plate, or just running amperage in general. Now, I do like the size of these, and I like the weight. They feel solid. It feels good. It doesn't feel cheap, while at the same time it's not terribly heavy and it's not terribly light. And to me, that kind of is an indicator of going to be your quality of unit here. And with these, you want to be careful. They do have limitations to them. You can't go over 400 amps on these. And you can do Cat 3 600 volt, or Cat 2 300 volt or less. So, like Cat 1 at 208, 230, or 120. Things like that. But this is pretty limited just in general. Now, obviously, when you're using this, you want to make sure that you don't have an electrical hazard that you're going to shock your meter, shock you, or whatever, or you're going to touch bare electrical lead. You want to, make sure that you're judicious when you use these, and just be very careful when you put it on, you get it on, and when it hangs, you just want, either you're going to hold it so that it doesn't touch anything, which is thankfully why it's all plastic, so the electrical hazard aspect is diminished through the tool itself. However, you may end up touching a bare lead with your hand in trying to access a spot to put this on, and that you just want to be very careful. So that's the 323. When we get to the 117, we got this magnet. I went ahead and put it on. I think it's pretty nifty, actually. If I can get it out. There we go. This magnet attachment, it's adjustable in height. You can readjust the magnet base and all that. And what's nice is that you can put this up and you can, essentially hang your meter to where you can actually read it right in front of you. And that's really helpful. Or you can even have it off to the side, but basically so then it's not on the ground and then you're trying to reach your leads all the way up to where you're going. Now, looking at the 117 here, this thing is chock full of features. Now, this is not an exact version of the one I carry. I do think that this is missing a couple items, but overall, it's still a very useful tool, and I really enjoy this tool. So, one reason I love Fluke and their products is because 9 times out of 10 their products are going to be relatively superior and they're well made. So for instance, just with these meter leads, right, we see that we have this little bitty tip here. Okay, this works for when you're trying to get into an area. You see we have the plastic shield. This is so if you have a bare wire or a bare connection and you have to reach behind that connection, it's not going to carry over. It's not going to create a dead short. So say you have like a contactor coil, right? But your 24 volt leads are towards the back, but your 120 leads are right here. Okay. Well, if I reach this in without this and I'm not extremely careful as I'm doing it, then what I can do is actually short out the 24 volt system, because now it could potentially touch the 120 tab and send 120 into a 24 volt circuit, which is just going to smoke it. It's going to fry it. And so one of the things that I like about these is that it comes with this little shield that rotates down, if you twist the lead. That is super cool. Now, what's also neat is that these leads are threaded, which means that Fluke actually makes different lead attachments that you can screw on the end of this. It might be more of a needle tip instead of a blunt tip, or you may have just a different style. Maybe it's like a horseshoe or like an I style lead attachment where you can do more fixed lead attachments to get your measurements. Overall with these leads, you just feel them and they feel good. The rubber that they use for the actual jacketing here, I think is some of the best jacketing material that you can use. And that's just mainly because you can leave it in the sun. You can, wind it up around the unit a million times. It can be exposed to different chemicals and environments, and they just don't break down. They discolor a little bit, they kind of do fade, they start getting a little different appearance, but as far as their usefulness and integrity, they remain. These are good items to have. And typically, even when I buy like a field piece meter, I will buy Fluke leads just because I trust the safety, I trust the quality. Now, when we're looking at the meter here, we have some pretty interesting features here. We could do, so depending on the different lead attachments that you purchase for this, right, is, you can do resistance, so you can check ohms, like with an amp clamp. You can get an actual attachment that will plug into this. Or you could, this one does not do temperature. So that's one of the main feature differences between my 118, I believe is what it's called, versus the 117. 117 is geared more towards electricians, versus I believe it's the 118 that is geared more towards HVAC, because it gives us the features that we would commonly use, like temperature and low volt, microvolt systems. So with this, we have our standard. We can check hertz, which is frequency, or we can check voltage in AC. That's what the wavy line means. So when you guys see the wavy line on your meter here, over the V or an A, that's typically AC voltage. Now we go down here to the straight, okay, straight with dash 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 underneath, over the V or the A, okay. And what that means is DC, direct current voltage. So you got to know the difference of what you're working on, so that way you can make sure you have the proper measurements of whatever you're doing. As far as this meter's ability and reliability, I find Fluke meters, whether it's the 117 model or the 118 model, to be very nice. Now coming down, we have millivolt. Now under the millivolt tab, we can see that we can do AC and DC with that setting. So that means if you're dealing with a system that's like typically under 12 volts, right, then you're going to be looking into that, or even less than a volt typically. Now coming down to the next feature is resistance, okay, ohms. Now with ohms, that's checking, we have ohms and we have continuity, which are essentially one and the same. Continuity is verifying that our wire is intact. Resistance tells us how much impedance or how much resistance of the voltage or the amperage going through that system. Typically it's amperage when it comes to electrical. So, if you have a wire but you have a resistance, can't fucking speak today, resistor in the middle. So when you're checking continuity, all your meter is doing here is sending a signal from one lead to the other lead through the wire, and it's just a signal. So as long as there's no break, it's going to make a tone. Okay, that's continuity. Or you're going to see, if you're in the ohms selection, then you'll see resistance in that, but it will show you that you have continuity. So continuity versus resistance. Now on that resistor, if I move my meter to the resistance tab, now what it's going to do is that it's going to show me how much resistance. So if I have a 5 ohm resistor, then in a wire that, let's say in theory, has no resistance, then when you put your meter on it, it's going to show 5 ohms because of that resistor, okay, because it's sending a bit of amperage through with that signal to check to see how much is in there. So it's a really I use that feature all the time, ohms, because I'm always checking if circuits are open, if switches are open, things like that. So like even on like a furnace safety switch, right, like a rollout switch that is a low volt circuit, so it's 24 volts, it's part of the safety circuit, so that means it has to pass through voltage through all these switches and then come back to the board in order for it to start the firing process for the furnace to know, hey, everything's safe, we're good to go. Now what happens is that, say you have a rollout switch that's open, well, now when you get to that furnace or that whatever piece of equipment, it's going to show a fault, right? So in my world, like a furnace, that would be a fault. It's going to say rollout switch or safety switch open, unable to start. Okay, so then I start tracking through that low voltage circuit, right? And I find a safety switch. Well, when I put my leads on either side of the safety switch, you're going to have 24 volts coming in typically, but if the switch is open, you'll see 0 volts, right? So then you want to verify, okay, is that switch open? So then you switch your meter to the ohm section, and then what you do is put your leads on either side of that switch, and you will either see OL, open line, or you will see, I've seen as high as like zero point 0.8 ohms. It usually varies, but generally you want to see under an ohm if the switch is closed, because it's just a switch. There shouldn't be any resistance on that switch. Any real measurable resistance, we should say. So this feature is very handy for that. Now we have this next one, which is diode and capacitor settings. Okay, so diodes they aren't switches, but they kind of are. So if you're passing through a diode, it's basically a check valve for electrical. So it's going to allow the electrical voltage to pass through one way, but it won't allow it to pass backwards the other way. So then basically it prevents backfeeding through a system. Then we have capacitor setting, which is the yellow with that interesting little kind of hook and bend there. Okay, and with that you can look at the prior episode I did on capacitors and how we use that function to check it. Basically, it gives us a microfarad reading, and we compare those readings to what the capacitor is actually rated to determine if it's go or no go, basically. Now moving down, we have amperage settings and frequency amperages. Okay, those I don't typically use on these meters. That's why I have this meter, because when it comes to amperages, I'm not usually checking DC amperage, so I rarely ever use that mode. But I'll check AC amperage, and that's exactly what this meter does. And that's why I use this, because with this, I don't have to have my leads attached to it. So I don't always have to have a set of leads on here that are going to get in the way when I want to go, clamp this up on a wire. Whereas this unit, I'm going to typically have my leads attached, and I'm just going to have them rolled up and tucked in my pack. And that's so, whenever I'm tracing through a system, I use this. When I'm checking motors to verify if they're running or not, or maybe they're overheating, maybe they're overworking, or maybe they're underworking for some reason. That's what I use this for. This tells me, okay, what's my resistance, what's my voltage to it, and then this will tell me how much it's working. So these meters are pretty packed with some features, and what's nice is that you have different ranges, and you have a light, and you can hold. So if you're taking a reading and you want to just see it for that moment, or you want to just look at it for a second because you're doing a math equation, you can hit hold. Minimum, maximum, I rarely ever use it, but there are guys that use this feature all the time, and it just kind of gives you the max and the minimum of what your meter saw during the whatever you did. Say you have say you use the amperage, which this meter does not use. That's kind of a bummer. I didn't notice that, but still not the end of the world. You would use the amperage function, or even like an ohms function, or you would use it in such a way where if you needed to record, like say inrush, right? So in air conditioners, we deal with inrush when it comes to compressors and like motors, right? So what you would be looking at is you would have your amperage device hooked into this around the wire, and you would flip the switch on the unit. It would come on, and what it would do is that if you do the min max, it'll tell you the maximum, like we're just taking amps for instance, maximum amount of amps it saw and the lowest amount of amps it saw. And then usually while it's running, you'll see it's running amps. But that can be a really handy feature, in the right situation. And next button is range. Okay, now on range, that just allows us to, see the range which with something ran in. It can give us a bit more data points essentially. Maybe we want to see in a timeline you know, a third of the way through that timeline or 2/3 of the way through that timeline. We don't, you know, it's more just so you can kind of see throughout. And then finally, the yellow button here, that just allows you to switch between the white, the white symbol modes to the yellows. So, like on voltage, we have a yellow HZ, which HZ means hertz, which is in reference to frequency, right? So, in order to go voltage AC, but you're dealing with AC hertz, you will press the yellow button, which will then put it into hertz mode. If you can see that well enough, it says HZ. So, you know, this meter is full of good features, and I really like them. They're very durable. You can drop them, you can bang them, you can do a lot of things with them. They have a really good rubber case on them and a hard plastic body. I would say these are well worth the investment. If you are just getting into the trade, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you go buy a Fluke. I would go buy like a UEI or a field piece, just because they're more affordable and it gets you used to using a meter. When you're using like a Fluke or, you know, even another top end brand, there's a few I just can't remember. These are for the seasoned guys. These are for the guys who are genuinely investing in their career, I'd say. These are great for long term and constant use. I mean, like with everything, you get a lemon from time to time. And as I use this set, I'm thinking about giving this set to my next technician, just, you know, as a bonus, because these are great meters and they're a good investment. You know, you normally these are about $300 to $350 for the pack, and depending on where you go, one of these can be $250, you know, in cost. So buying the pack definitely saves you some money. Definitely worth an investment into your career if this is something that you're going to do long term. So as I use these, I will update, and if I find things I don't like about it, or I find deficiencies that I think would help you guys in purchasing your products, I will definitely get back and let you know. But for now, I think that's going to be it for us. Stay tuned later. We will have some other shows coming on today, and you know, we'll kind of bullshit and take it from there. All right, guys, take care now. Bye.